Well, good day and welcome to SOP, Save Our Planet. My name is Gary Willing. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. And if you happen to be in the path of this upcoming winter storm that everybody has been talking about over the last few days, I hope you stay safe, you stay warm, and you keep your car out of a ditch. Couldn't be simpler, right? Those are the three do's and not do's. But if you are in Atlanta, and I drive in Atlanta. I mean, it really pertains to everybody, but especially if you're in Atlanta, because I'm one of the drivers in Atlanta. If you hit ice, do not slam on your brakes. Pump those brakes, especially if I'm around you. Now, if you, I digress, but if you, I'm going to try to answer some questions that came my way, try to address a few comments. And if you have something you want to tell me, something you want to ask me, feel free to post those in the comment section. Email me, searchforsigns@mail.com, and then I'll try to answer or address the comments in the next video. But in the meantime, if you want to get some questions answered for yourself, or if you want to see if this information is true for you, might I suggest going to the Share International site. Link is at the very top of the description portion of this video. Okie dokie. I had an email that came my way, and I'm going to pick apart a few of the things on there. So what's the first thing I want to talk about? I'm curious as to how your site came about. Well, it wasn't anything particularly noteworthy or comment-worthy, but it really just boiled down, Eileen, to I made a choice to do something about this information. That's it. It's been 7 years. Actually, I think next week is my 7-year anniversary of doing these videos. Prior to that, if I just went back 7 years before I started putting these videos up, I made a choice not to do anything with this information. Prior to that 7 years, I had known about this information for decades. I made a choice to do little or nothing about about this information. So it really just boils down to I made a choice, and I started with the intention of just talking about my own personal experiences with Maitreya. So I originally named it Search for Signs because that was something that Maitreya said in one of his messages. Those who search for signs will find them. And I thought that was kind of catchy, so I was like, search for signs. So I started recording some videos of me talking about my own personal experiences and maybe a couple little things about this information in some way. And then I think a few weeks after I started doing that, I got one little comment. It's very simple. It said, "This is bullshit." And I bring it up because, it really encouraged me to put up another video, actually. I don't know what this person's intention was of letting me know how little they thought about what I said. Maybe they were thinking they were going to discourage me enough to where I wouldn't put up another video, but it did the exact opposite. And there's no way for me to ever find this person, but if I did, I'd give them a hug and thank them because they changed my life. Because I remember when I got that video or that comment on that video, I was like, oh my gosh, somebody out there heard it? Are you kidding me? I'm putting up another video tomorrow. I mean, it was like that. And then somewhere along the line, I got a question that came my way, and I can't remember what the question was. You'd think I would remember that over the first comment. And then I was like, is it okay if I answer a question? Am I allowed to? And I was like, nobody's answering. So yeah, I think I can try to answer this question. Okay. And then it just kind of snowballed from there to the point where, it's been 7 years. I put up well over 1,000 videos and, and counting. And I get questions and comments all the time. And it really is coming from the user and the listener participation that I keep putting these videos up, to be honest. I love it. I remember saying to myself, and I remember saying to other people in my life years upon years ago, if I could just get in front of a crowd of maybe 3 or 4 or 5 people even, and talk about this information once a week, I would be the happiest person in the world. And to be honest, that was true all along. I am one of the happiest people I know. And just ask people around me. They'll tell you the same thing. Doesn't mean I don't have problems. Doesn't mean I don't get frustrated. Doesn't mean I don't shut down from time to time and be quiet. And when I do, people are like, are you okay? You're usually so happy. And it's like, no, I'm just, thinking about something or whatever like that. But overall, this information for myself personally, I'm only speaking from my own personal experiences. I can't speak for you guys, has changed my life. Just talking about it. Just reading Benjamin Crum's Masters articles and trying to record them and having to go back and read them again because I made a mistake, or whatever like that. I learn a lot about this too. You guys asking questions is helping me to relearn information and learn it in a better way and so forth, to where, like I said, I would have never in a million years expected that I would still be putting up videos after 7 years and people would be asking me questions for sure. So does that answer your question? It came about by choice. The funny thing is, and the truth of it is, we all have that same choice in our lives. Do we do something or not? And the reason why, and this kind of addresses some of your concerns about why nobody's talking about this and you haven't heard about this from anybody, is the same reason. People are choosing not to do anything with this information. There are a lot of people that know this information. There are a lot of people that have had personal Maitreya experiences that are quite extraordinary. I know a lot of them myself, a lot of these people myself, and choose not to talk about this with people. They don't think it will do any good, perhaps. They don't think they're good enough to talk about it, and that's the reason why they don't talk about it. I have stumbled across people in the media, years ago, trying to talk about this information and giving them press releases and so forth. And they told me, this was somebody from CNN, we know all about this information. Now, maybe they believed it, maybe they didn't, but they weren't doing anything with it because they didn't want to do anything with it. Why are we not doing anything with it? Why did I not do anything with this information for years, right? Well, it's complacency. And where does complacency come from? Complacency comes from fear. It comes from the fact that I didn't think that I would be able to make a difference and it wouldn't do any good or whatever. And that is really the reason why we're in the situation that we're in. The reason why we haven't heard about this from people in our media, the reason why people aren't talking about this is because of complacency. And so it stands to reason that nothing is changing because of complacency. In fact, Ben's master even said, it's not about the evil in the world that's the problem, which it's a problem having evil in the world, don't get me wrong. But the evil itself is not the problem. It's the crippling inertia of humanity that's keeping us stuck. And this goes for each and every one of us individually, myself included, and humanity as a whole. And the reason why, and this kind of circles around to a comment that Thomas made about the world leaders not wanting to do anything with the world and poverty and so forth. Of course they don't want to do anything with it. They're happy. This system was working for them very, very well, right? I mean, why would Elon Musk want to change anything? He just made over $100 billion in 1 month. It's insane. And yet, there are literally people starving to death. He could change a lot of that himself by just what he made in 1 month, and he won't do it. Because of why? Because of inertia, because of complacency, because of his fear. You don't think those people have fear? The reason why they're so greedy is because of fear. Greed cannot exist without fear. If you have no fear, you have no greed. There's nothing to be greedy about. So and then when it gets to humanity's not doing anything because they're afraid that we say to ourselves all the time, oh, there's nothing I can do. Well, that's not true. What did Mother Teresa say? If you can't feed 100 people, just feed one. If you can't get in front of a million people or 10 million people, just get in front of one. This person that sent me the email was talking about this with a few people in her life. Perfect. That's the best thing to do. And she's also occupying her time by reading and educating herself about this, which is the other thing that I suggested that you guys do if you want to do more, right? Educate yourself on it. But the reason, and I hate to say this, Tom, and I'm not judging you because I've been in that situation too. The reason why you think that there is nothing that can be done is because of fear. And you think that you can't do anything with it, to change the situation. But and if you believe that you can't do anything to change the situation, you are right 100% of the time. But here's the flip side of that. If you believe that there is something that you can do, even if it's a tiny bit, you are right. You know what I'm saying? Because you will make a difference. And it all boils down to choice. What do we do? Now, to get to the comment coming from the email, but also kind of in a roundabout way, what this person Thomas was talking about why people aren't talking about this, why isn't there any interest to this, a lot of that also has to do with what's going on in the world today. So individually, we are bombarded with nothing but negative news. Whether it's in legacy media or on YouTube or in our own lives, we're getting bombarded with nothing but toxicity and negativity. So we feel hopeless. So we don't do anything with it. Oh, there's nothing I can do. I don't have the money that Elon Musk has. He could change it if he wants to, but he's not going to because he's in that position. When in actuality, there's a lot that we can do, individually and collectively. But commercialization has got its tentacles and its roots in everything. And that's the problem. Maitreya says it's more dangerous than a nuclear bomb. It's creating such injustice that it's actually squeezing out all the vitality in humanity. And if left unchecked and it continues on, it will destroy all life on this planet, to be honest. Now, to look at this historically, because this is to kind of address Thomas's comments about the reason why nobody in the world stage is talking about this. Okay, we're not hearing about people talking about Maitreya. Nobody's seen Maitreya's interview and recognized him that we can think of, right? I mean, I'm sure there were people that recognized him as Maitreya, but they're doing exactly what Ben told them to do, which is to not talk about it, to let people recognize them for themselves. But if you don't believe that to be true, or if you're starting to think that there's no truth to who and what Maitreya is because you haven't seen any evidence on TV, I can't argue with that. Okay, I believe 100% of what I'm saying about Maitreya. It's all coming from the teachings. It's also coming from the fact that I've met Maitreya in my life and I've had some very interesting experiences that lead me to believe that this is true. But I can't convince you of that on its own, and I don't have any other evidence to back it up other than that. So that's why I don't really argue with people when they say, well, I just don't think there's any truth to this, which is maybe what the kind of to the point where what this person Thomas is kind of coming to. Fine. Now, I do think that eventually you'll see some evidence for yourself, and you might, oh, okay, But this is what I was gonna talk about. Maitreya made a prediction years ago that the stock market was going to crash. He actually made it in the late 80s. And he said it was going to start in Japan. And at the time that he made that prediction, the Nikkei average, which is kind of like the Japanese version of our Dow here in the United States, started to go down and then down and down. So it went from I think 40-something thousand points down to less than 10,000, which is, if the Dow did that today, they would say that the stock market collapsed, right? So it did collapse in its own way. Maitreya said it would start to, reverberate all around the world, which it did. And if you remember in I think it was 88 in October, or that Black Monday where the Dow Jones just dropped significantly in the point loss, that was a direct result of what was happening in Japan. Now, but this is where the turn of events happened. Okay, so Maitreya said that him saying that the stock market was going to collapse was not a prophecy. It was based off of the law of cause and effect, which there's a lot of variables in the law of cause and effect that are organic that can change at any moment. One of the things that happened was, at the time that he made that prediction, the Cold War ended. And there was this tremendous military buildup for decades between, on both sides, between the Soviet Union and the West. And when that ended, that energy had to go somewhere, he said, and it circled the world several times, and it went into the stock market. And when that happened, and if you remember historically, right around 1990, 91, the stock market really started to take off. And more than that, it started to really become central to people's lives. And in the 90s, or in the 80s and before that, news about the stock market going up or down was really relegated to, Section C in the paper, and that was about it. It was a few stories back in the nightly news. It wasn't the main headlines every single day. But as it started to increase and go up, it started to increase in popularity. More and more people were interested in the stock market. More and more people were starting to participate in the stock market to where it became headline news all the time. And where people obsess about the markets all the time now. And so it's changed life here everywhere because of that. And it drove the markets to go up because people were putting more and more money into the markets. So the situation did kind of change based off, even though he made that prediction, and I think there was truth to what he was saying, it changed based on human activity. And it went up and up and up in the 90s to where, if you remember 2004 to 2008, it just kept going up and down, and there was these huge mercurial swings upwards and downwards for a long time. Every time it would go down, I would think that this was it. It's going to collapse. And then it would go back up again. Well, what was happening? They found a way to make money out of thin air. And they put it into the markets to drive the markets up. It was all manipulated. Like was what Thomas was talking about. It's not the markets doing this. This is all manipulation. But they found a way to kind of keep it to go up. And then when it would go down, they would buy back in. And when it would go up, they would sell. It would go down back in. But what happened in 2008, the bottom dropped. And it kept going down. And they were dumbfounded. They didn't know what to do. The President of the United States had no answer. The so-called economic experts on the news had no answer to what was going on and how to solve it. And they tried everything. And it just kept going down and down and down. So in the 2008 to 2010, the masters saw that it was collapsing. And they were hoping that it would just collapse on its own. Because once it collapses on its own, whenever that is, it would bring humanity to its knees, and then, as Maitreya says, also to our senses. It was hoped that it would collapse in the late 80s. It didn't collapse enough. Then it was hoped in 2008, so about 20 years after that, it was hoping that it would just collapse on its own. But it didn't. And then Ben's master wrote in an article, and you can read it for yourself. He wrote it in, I think, 2009-ish, that if it's allowed to go back up and recover, it's going to go up to even higher highs, which is exactly what it's been doing. But do you think it's going to sustain itself forever? Even the most bullish, optimistic economic assessment is that the markets can't keep going up forever, right? It's not going to sustain itself. There's no economic model or truth that's going to allow life on planet Earth to exist where an individual can make over $150 billion in 1 month and people are literally starving to death that same month. There's no way that it can continue on in this way. It's going to collapse. And Maitreya says it's going to bring humanity to its knees. It's also going to bring us to our senses. So I think the reason why nobody is seeing Maitreya on TV and recognizing him is maybe, and this is just a guess, he has taken a step back from giving interviews as he was doing when the stock market was collapsing in 2008 to 2011, 2012. He's taken a step back and he's not doing as many interviews or interviews at all right now. Because what's the point? Humanity is not going to be receptive to the conversation of sharing yet until we are on our knees and starting to wake up and becoming making more sense of the situation. So I think we're waiting for another collapse, and it will be worse than what happened in 2008, and it will be worse than what happened in the Great Depression. But we have the solution, we have the answer, which is sharing. The goods are all there. The food is still going to be there, even when the stock markets collapse. That's all ideology. That's all, in the internet ethers of life. It's not the actual nuts and bolts hardware of life. The food, the clothing, the shelter, the healthcare, it's all still going to be there. So when it collapses, people are going to go, what do we do? And that's when Maitreya is he's already made inroads with us by giving interviews already. That's when he's going to be much more recognizable and noticeable and inspire us to do these things. So, we've been waiting. Some of us have lost hope. Some of us have continued on. Some of us aren't doing anything. Some of us are doing something, but it's a choice that we all have. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue on and have a future for humanity? Well, then the humanity has to make the choice to share. Up until the meantime, if you want to see the changes in the world, you want to see some hope, you want to, make a difference, you have the choice to do that or not, Very simple. I love you guys. Thank you very much for the comments. Hopefully I didn't address all the comments that came my way, but I kind of grouped them all together to kind of make one video. I love you guys. Thank you very much. And I look forward to putting out videos in the very near future. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.